Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
That's the rules.
Welcome to the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper.
Welcome back to the Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast, and happy Halloween or All Saints Day or All Hallows Tide, if you prefer. We are back always with an interesting person making a positive change in our community. This time, very, very special guest, John Schneider. But first, to subscribe to the Mill Creek View podcast, visit us anywhere you get your podcast at Mill Creek View, Tennessee. While you're there, please subscribe. It's totally free to you. Welcome to our People in the News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with John Schneider, aka Jonathan Kent, aka Bo Duke. John has enjoyed a successful career in country music, topping charts with his #1 hits, I've Been Around Enough to Know, and You're the Last Thing I Needed Tonight. From 1984 to 1987, Schneider released 6 albums, including his #1 album, A Memory Like You, and a Greatest Hits album. Schneider then took time off to pursue his acting opportunities, but would return with Worth the Wait in 1996. He's gone on to release 2 Christmas albums, including Home for Christmas with Dukes of Hazzard co-star Tom Wopat. Check those out. Christmas is almost here. It would be impressive enough for an actor to star in a single show that changed the course of television history with iconic characters, but the fact that John Schneider's done that for at least 4 decades makes him nothing short of legendary. Whether it's playing Jim Cryer on Tyler Perry's The Haves and the Have-Nots, immortalizing Superman's daddy, Jonathan Kent on Smallville, and Bo Duke on The Dukes of Hazzard. His is one of the most recognized faces in all of TV. And there he is. According to on commentary of Smallville in 2001, John was approached by some kids who said, "Hey, you're Jonathan Kent." It was the first time that he was recognized as someone else other than Bo Duke. He's also been seen in movies from Smokey and the Bandit, Burt Reynolds, 1977, to Joe in Christmas in Tune, co-starring Reba McEntire, 2021, to regularly popping up on Dr. Quinn, Medicine Women, Nip Tuck, The Secret Life of the American Teenager, and even Dancing with the Stars. John Richard Schneider IV was born April 8th, 1960 in Mount Kisco, New York, to Shirley and John Richard Jack Schneider III, a pilot and U.S. Air Force veteran. John began acting at the age of 8. He and his mother moved to Atlanta, Georgia when he was 14. He won the role of Bo Duke on The Dukes of Hazzard 1979 on CBS by pretending he was a genuine country boy from Snellville, Georgia, not Smallville. He had a week's growth of beard and held a beer can, claiming he was in his mid-20s as the role called for. Show ran from 1979 to 1985 when young Schneidi was 18 years old through 25. I was 8 to 14 and never missed a Friday. 4 kids: Leah Michelle Castle, Project Runway, All-Stars, Camera Woman; Chasen Joseph, actor, Secret Life of American Teenager; and Karish Schneider, active duty firefighter and played Danielle in Collier and Company; and Mandy. And now he's on the Mill Creek View podcast with me. John, how are you today?
My God, that was wonderful. I have to mention one more beautiful child from my lovely wife, Alicia, and I. Her daughter, my daughter now, is Jessica Turner, who's going to give me a grandson.
Oh boy!
In March, yeah,
a new role.
March. Karis gave us a granddaughter, so we're gonna have a grandson in March, and it's just wonderful. My God, you've done your research. Thank you.
40 years on the screen, and looking up to you as an 8-year-old, the coolest guy I knew on TV was not. I had to do a lot of homework, and I had a lot of editing. Believe me, there was a lot more there. So I'm great, and I'm trying not to be a fanboy and freak out.
That's okay. It's great. It's greatly appreciated. When there's some video on YouTube somewhere where somebody came up. I was at a Comic-Con, right, and they were journalism. They're the journalism class, and they wanted to interview me. And I said, "Oh, great." And they came up and said, "Okay, who are you and what do you do?" And I said, "Look, pal," said, "first of all, if you're in journalism school, really, then do your research. Figure out who it is you're talking to, because you never want to say something like that to someone like me or really anybody." So anyway, it was like people were saying, "Oh my gosh, you were mean." So there was this video about John Schneider, Jonathan Kent, being kind of abrupt with this guy. 10 years later, I'm doing a news show in I don't remember where I was, but the person that was interviewing me on the news show said, look, I want to tell you, I'm the guy that you read the riot act to. And had you not done that to me, I never would be where I am today.
Look at you giving advice, fatherly advice.
Well, it was advice, but it was not, I didn't sugarcoat it because I don't, I'm from New York. Funny thing about me, I'm from Westchester County, New York, which is arguably one of the most confusing counties electorally in our world today. And when I moved to Atlanta with my mother, she worked for IBM. Where did I go to high school? So I was born in Westchester County, New York, and I went to high school in Fulton County, Georgia, arguably the first or second most confused county in our country today. Not to get into politics.
Yeah, and you're not confused. I just remember I had your vinyl album right next to Elvis and Grease. So, that's
oh my gosh. And Alicia and I did 14 other albums while we were in our 8 years. We did 14 albums. And I honestly don't remember if it was 9 or 11 films.
Yeah, I have the details. We're going to get into all of that, but I wanted to start off on a different note. You co-founded with Marie Osmond the Children's Miracle Network charity organization in 1993, and I just want people to know how huge that is. That organization helps children by raising funds for children's hospitals around the United States. A nonprofit.
It was 1983.
Oh,
we're 40 years. Yeah, it's okay. I just want to, because I want people to understand how long we've been doing this. So we actually, the first telethon was in 1983, but it was founded, you have to file paperwork and do things for a 501c3 in 82. So that organization is now 40 years old.
Wow.
And I'm very, very proud of it. We've raised a little bit over $8 billion.
That was what I was getting. Yeah, that is unbelievable. That does the work. And if it wasn't for that, Children's Miracle Network, 4-star rating, so it's legit, no question about it. Worthy cause, 170 facilities. So congratulations to you.
We raised money for 170 children's hospitals all across the United States and Canada. And what it is basically we know how to organize people who are already kind of organized. We know how to manage people who are organized and help them raise funds better for their own local children's hospital. So it's been remarkable. I meet children who were children or people who were children way back in the beginning, who now have children of their own who wouldn't be alive if it weren't for the funds raised by Children's Miracle Network. So it really is it's a wonderful part of my life. And I'm very delighted to remember and say that I was 22 years old when we founded it.
That's right. I was going to wonder.
That's pretty cool.
And Marie was pretty young too, right? I mean, you guys were TV
but just a little bit older than me.
Yeah.
Just a little bit older than me.
Just a little bit older.
So I tell her all the time, I say, the difference between you and I? And she says, male and female. I said, no, I grew up watching you.
That's great. That's a good one.
She doesn't like that very much, but she's like my sister, so it's okay.
You were so young in the 80s. I mean, you wrote and directed several episodes of Dukes of Hazzard, and you did your own stunts, including driving. How would they even let you do that?
Let's give credit where credit's due. I drove the car a lot, but I never jumped it. I didn't jump the car. We had, my gosh, we probably had 15 different stuntmen and women who worked on the show all the time. So I did not jump a car until after I turned 50. And I did that right here at John Schneider Studios with Alicia Elaine Schneider as the producer of that movie. And that movie is called Christmas Cars. But fights and all that kind of stuff, I did do all that, but I would be doing a tremendous group of wonderfully talented, daring people a tremendous disservice if I said I did my own stunts in Dukes. I did some of my own stunts.
No question, you did the jumping over the hood of the car and all that. Are you?
Well, yes, I did slide over the hood of the car, but what could go wrong for anyone but the car?
Right. Are
It
you
was a
are you paying the
Dirk
price
Bentley.
now? Any
No. And I'm
Okay.
going to jump. I've got one more jump to do. We're making we did three movies that were, the first one was a tribute to Smokey and the Bandit called Stand on It. We did a sequel to that called Poker Run. And then we're doing the third installment is called Double or Nothing. And I've already jumped the car once for that, but I have to jump it one more time. And that's going to be at the Nashville Speedway in Nashville, Tennessee, right? So not far from you. Not sure when I'm going to do that, but I'm going to jump the car probably 100 and hopefully 150 to 175 feet.
Wow.
And it's going to be great fun. And that is a 2016 Hellcat Challenger that has T-tops cut in it. So it'll look like the Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am.
Oh, that's going to be amazing. Well, speaking of that, that's a great segue because one of the creatives behind Dukes was James Best, the actor who played Roscoe P. Coltrane. He told you, at least this is a rumor, to play Bo like Burt Reynolds, who you got to act with in Bandit, and he was also in Hooper with Burt Reynolds. He was also well, we all know that's about the classic love of the unknown stuntman. Every boy I knew growing up loved Bandit and Bo Duke for the same reasons, tools and cars. So I read James was considered your best friend, and you were a pallbearer at his funeral. Is that all true?
He was. I was not actually. I would have loved to have been. I would have been honored to have been, but no, I was, and he would be delighted. I was working. So Jimmy was also in The End.
Yeah.
He
With
was
Dom DeLuise.
Yeah, he was in a lot of movies, but he and Burt were very, very close. And when I was in Smokey and the Bandit, I don't want to give the wrong impression here either, because I was 16 years old. And as you said, I did, when I auditioned for Dukes, I came in and I told them I was from the rural South, and I brought in a 6-pack of beer, and I'm actually from Westchester County, New York. I told them I was 24, I was 18. But the only reason I had the nerve, oh, and I also told them I came in first in my class at the Georgia School of High Performance Driving, which didn't exist, but there was no internet. The reason I had the nerve to do that is because when I was 16, I heard that Burt Reynolds was in town in Atlanta filming at the Lakewood Fairgrounds, a movie called Smokey and the Bandit. So I skipped school and I went down and I parked my car in the dirt, jumped over a fence, found a guy with a radio and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey man, I'm sorry I'm late, but traffic on I-85 is a bear. Where's hair and makeup?" And I got into the Holy of Holies. I spent the whole day. Nobody knew what to do with me, but I spent the whole day with Jackie Gleason that day.
Oh my gosh.
Who was living at the time he was doing Smokey and the Bandit in Westchester County, New York. So he came from my hometown to do Smokey and the Bandit. So when we started talking about Mount Kisco and Katona and Bedford Hills, he was like, "Come on, kid, sit down. Talk to me for a while." So I'm just in it at the end when the credits freeze. A tire falls off of Jackie's car and hits a long, tall, gangly John Schneider in the shin. So that's all I am in Smokey and the Bandit. But I got in and I didn't get kicked out and I didn't get arrested.
Yeah, and look how close to greatness.
That gave me the nerve to tell a tall tale again when the Dukes of Hazzard audition came around.
Fantastic. Well, you had a brush with greatness, literally. So that's fantastic.
The great one, the great Jackie Gleason. It was fantastic. And then years, Burt Reynolds became a dear friend of mine, as did Hal Needham, who wrote and directed Smokey and the Bandit. And both of them remember that kid nobody knew what to do with, who almost got a second AD fired.
So another Hollywood legend about you, sir, is that you got your start as a magician performing tricks for classmates, and that you once had yourself chained up and tossed into the family swimming pool like Houdini's escape act. I'm sure your mother was not happy with you.
She was not happy. I waited until she got home from work. And it was a swimming pool. I don't want to give you a false impression about my upbringing either, because it was a swimming pool at the apartments we were living in.
Okay.
And I was chained up and tied up and handcuffed and padlocked. And my mom got back from IBM and said, "Mom, what's this?" And boom. I dove into the pool, and I got out, obviously, because we're talking about it, but she was not happy with me. She was not happy. I think she said something along the lines of, if you had drowned, I'd have killed you.
Well, you certainly killed your magician career, but you went on to other things.
Well,
So,
I'm a lifetime member of the Magic Castle. So
well, look at that. All right.
yeah,
And
I
five
haven't done
time.
much of it lately. I should. I really love magic, but
That's far away, actually. Yeah.
well, in
Five
fact,
time.
let me tell you one thing. When Boss Hogg would do things with cards on the Dukes, it was usually my hands.
Really?
Because I was 18, 19, 20 years old. I was really dexterous at that point, not so much anymore. But I did that. The last episode of Dukes that I wrote and directed was all about Roscoe. It was called Opening Night at the Boar's Nest. It was all about Roscoe, the great Coltrano, making Boss Hogg disappear from this box that he had ordered mail order. So the very last episode of Dukes was all about magic because of my upbringing and my love for magic.
Well, look at that. Amazing. All right. Well, you also this is amazing, 5-time chart-topping country artist with over 20 albums to your credit, including well over 100 new songs since returning to the recording studio in just 2016.
Yeah.
Writing, directing, and starring in a multitude of movies, like a Renaissance man. How'd you find the time?
Well, when you're following your dream, I mean, you make the time. You just make the time. And when Alicia and I were making movies, it was it's all we did. I mean, we lived a wonderful life. We loved, but she loved what she did. She used to run Robert Evans' company, who was the president of Paramount. So we somehow stretched 40 hours into every day, loved every minute of everything we did, loved each other passionately and wonderfully, and shared a dream. So it's one thing to have a dream and chase a dream, but it's an entirely different thing to be equally yoked with someone who has the same dream, who with whom you can chase that dream together. So we did those 14 albums. I did one since she passed away in February. I did a brand new album for her called We're Still Us, which comes out on what I call Orange Friday in honor of the General Lee, which is right at the Friday after Thanksgiving. So see how it all kind of ties together?
I do.
But they say if you love your work, you never work a day in your life. And if you add to that, not only if you love your work, but you love who you're working with, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's amazing. Yeah, I took off your website. Alicia and I are truly the masters of our own destiny. Sink or swim, we lived a lot of life. We enjoy everything, or we wouldn't do it. Most of everything we've discussed, you did. Your wife and executive producer, most everything we've discussed already, you did with your wife, executive producer Alicia Alain. On Twitter, just last week, you reposted my center, my everything, my smile. And that was from February 21, 2023. She went to heaven. From her obituary, Alicia was a force that inspired others. She was kind and gracious to all she met. She always put herself last. She was very protective of her parents. She was mama bear that protected all her cubs. She was a fighter until the end. Alicia will be missed mightily. From everything I could tell about her, she's with Jesus, and you'll be together again one day. You collaborated on more than 100 songs, several films. What's next for you without her?
Well, the two things that had to be done this year, they're still with her. It's so unusual. There's some promises made. The first was We're Still Us, the album, which obviously she didn't know anything about. That's my tribute to her and my medicine for people who are on what I call the same road, the road of grief, the road of losing a spouse. And yet losing is an odd term because I didn't lose her. I know exactly where she is, right? And I know exactly where I'm going. And I know hers will be the first hand I touch when I get there. But she was writing a book about cancer and about being in charge of your own diagnosis. And race dirt track cars. So the book is called In the Driver's Seat. So the very first thing that I believe God touched me on the shoulder and said, do not let that book go away. You finish that book, because there's a lot of important information in there. So Jessica, our daughter, and myself, and a dear friend of ours named Jamie Blaine, finished that book, and that book will also be out on Orange Friday. Go to johnschneiderstudios.com, and it's about a lot of things, being in the driver's seat, certainly, but it's also about redefining victory. Because truth is, every prayer we prayed about Alicia's health and Alicia's pain was answered. She is pain-free. She's healthier than she has ever been. She's dancing. She's loving, and she misses me, but she's more patient than I am, because, she's in a world where perhaps there is no time. But it's so tough. It's so tough. I don't know how people without faith, if people truly thought they lost their spouse and they had no notion that they would ever see them again, they had no belief in eternity, I don't know how in the world they make it. So all of that being said, I'm writing this third installment of Stand On It, Poker Run, Double or Nothing. I'm writing that.
Okay.
Also, she and I were working on a script that was our love story that now is still our love story, but it has to change a bit. And I'm almost at the point in my soul where I can do this. Almost. It hasn't been a year yet.
Right.
And I'm told that Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, that the 3 holidays coming up right now are the hardest, especially the first year. So after that, I believe I'll tackle doing the screenplay that she and I were working on, which is called Winner Take All.
Great. And of course,
so I'll do that. So I have to do that, and then I have to do some music that's not about grief. I had to do this music about grief and about the hereafter and about, somewhere down the road, we'll be together again. Had to do that to honor her. I live to honor her, and really to help other people who are on this road, because it's tough. You cannot explain it to someone who's not on it. It's like trying to describe yellow to a blind person. It's next to impossible. I won't say it's impossible, because I believe all things are possible.
I bet the music will definitely go a long way to help do that, and especially make you happy. And of course, with all this talent of yours, you wrote a book in your own downtime, and writing is very hard. 2019 memoir, My Life, My Way. A reviewer on Amazon named Cyrus Webb, hello Cyrus, said, "I love how he tells his story, but also shares his truth and views about life, success, relationships, and even the controversies such as around the flag. Through it all, he is open, forthright, and reflective, and that is what makes this book well worth the time to read." What would you want to tell a 10-year-old Schneidi to get out of your book?
Schneidi. I love that. That's what Annette O'Toole from Smallville called me, Schneidi. Well, my 10-year-old was pretty focused. I've always had what Denver Pyle, my dear Uncle Jesse from Dukes of Hazzard, he said, "You know what you have, John?" And I said, "What's that?" He said, "You have the strength of your ignorance. Don't ever lose it." And I looked at him like, okay, I think I know what that means. And he said, every day, because for some reason, you don't seem to know how impossible what you do every day is. Don't ever lose that. don't ever look at something and think it's an insurmountable task. Because as far as, and he was talking to like a 20-year-old, said, as far as I can tell, you don't think anything is impossible. And I don't. And I didn't at 20, I didn't at 10. So I would tell my 10-year-old, you're on the right track.
Okay, there you go. And is that what the book does for folks?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the
okay.
book is the book encourages people to dream and dream big. We did a movie. It's a very dark movie and bad language, but I'm a fan of it. We did a movie called Anderson Bench, and at one point the ingenue looks at Anderson and he had just said, that's a pretty big dream you've got there. And she said, there's not much sense in having a small one. So if you're going to dream, and I highly recommend it, dream big, bigger than you can even imagine.
You had a very ambitious project called the Odyssey 2018, which released one song a week. I think Paul Liam was your producer. 2019 Southern rock inspired. Okay, of course.
Paul Lime and Alicia.
Southern rock inspired album, Redneck Rebel, and a deeply personal, inspirational album, Recycling Grace. I don't think you sleep. Am I wrong?
I actually do. I sleep pretty good. Wow. But I work fairly efficiently, because I work because when I write, I'm like ravenous. I've got to do this. When I record, and it's not because of a deadline, it's just because I love it. I can't wait to hear this music because I can hear it in my head. I can't wait to be able to share it with you. So, but I will tell you that when Alicia and I met, I had done the music before and I was not very excited about it. But when we lost everything in 2016 on our second flood of 2016, she found me playing a guitar in the living room, which had been flooded. And when she came in to talk to me, I put the guitar down. She said, "Why do you do that?" And I said, "Well, playing the guitar, when things are all gone to hell in a handbag, they make me feel better." And she said, or it makes me feel better. And she said, no. I didn't ask you why you picked it up. I asked you why you ever put it down, because you're obviously so happy when you play it. From that moment on, she said, we're going to do the Odyssey project. We're not going to do one CD. We're not going to do 10 songs. Everybody who listens to country music, everybody who does country music knows your music from the 80s. So we're going to remind them about why your music is so great. We're going to put out a song every Tuesday of next year. So we better get in the studio. So I tell you what, when two people are that in sync, it's God. God put those two souls together without question. Because we did more in any one of our 8 years together than most people do in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, truly.
And you don't do that without God. You really don't. And the stuff that we did is really good. Really, really good. I would put any movie or any song we ever cut up against any movie or any song ever made.
Yeah, I hope people really check it out, especially those who didn't know this existed in the first place. This is a big deal. And
JohnSchneiderStudios.com, or get my app. I have an app. And whose fault is that? Alicia. The John Schneider app. You can download.
So whose fault is 10,000 fans traveling annually to your 58-acre compound in Holden, Louisiana for Bow Extravaganza? What's that all about?
That's Alicia's fault too. That's my birthday party. That's my birthday party. And I had told her that Willie Nelson did Willie Nelson's birthday bash. I don't know if he's still doing it or not, but I was in the first and second farm aids. And I had mentioned that to her, and she would, like, a little light bulb went off. She said, we can do that here. So we had Kix Brooks play here. We had the Bellamy Brothers play here. We had Kid Rock play here. We've done a lot of stuff here. But she ran that too. I'm telling you, she ran that too.
Will it continue?
It was remember, she ran Robert Evans' office, Robert Evans' World, and Robert Evans was the president of Paramount. He did The Cotton Club. He did The Godfather. He did Chinatown. He did Harold and Maude, Rosemary's Baby. So we're talking about some serious chops here. You don't get to run that man's world unless you've really got your act together. That's the woman that I married.
And so will that continue?
Will what?
Will that continue? Will you still
I
have
think
the extravaganza?
I did it this year. It was hard. It was hard to do it this year. But I believe I'll do it next year. April is a ways away. And a lot of what I'm noticing is that there's the grief doesn't go away. But kind of like in a gym, you know, when you first get to a gym, a 45-pound plate is extremely heavy, but the more you lift it, the stronger you get with it. It's still a 45-pound plate, but your ability to carry it around gets a little bit better. Yeah. So by the time I get to February, when I'll really have to make a decision about Beau's Extravaganza, and that will be the year anniversary of my beautiful bride's passing, I think I'm hoping that 45-pound plate will be a little bit easier to carry around, and I will do Beau's Extravaganza, but no promises yet.
Okay. Well,
get my app. My app will tell you. John Schneider.
So the machine, as you called it, ever since you broke ties with the machine, you actually smashed sales records on DVD via the johnschneiderstudios.com, which you plugged twice. That's awesome. I just did it for you. Storefront. There'll be another one. And spearheaded the streaming service cineflixdod.com. So yes, that's still going on. You like people to be directed to that?
Oh, yeah. So Cineflix DOD, digital on demand, Cineflix digital on demand. Why, in the world we live in, why in the world would I sign some distribution deal with some company that's going to lie to me, right? I did one film that I got a standard, and I was delighted. I got a standard distribution deal on a film I did with Kane Hodder and Bill Moseley and Ari Mihailov and Malcolm Danar and Don Shanks. And it's a gruesome horror comedy called Smothered. Made one deal 9 years ago and haven't made a dime. Have not made a single dime. And that's the only film I had investors in too. So not only have I not made anything back, but the people who believed in me have not made anything back. And that movie has been distributed worldwide. Worldwide. So these people, IndieCan, by the way, independent filmmakers, if you are paying attention and you are about to pop open a beer because you just got a deal with IndieCan, tear it up, drink the beer anyway, but tear up that deal because you don't want it. You don't want it. There. Sue me. Call a lawyer and sue me. Sue me. So since then, we started making our own films and distributing them ourselves, not only in DVD form, but we've started a streaming service called Cineflix DOD. So that has been fantastic to us. We don't make millions of dollars, but we're an independent film studio. We don't spend millions of dollars on a movie. You know, we spend a couple of $100,000 on a movie, but that's a lot easier to make back than millions of dollars, certainly.
Was that To Die For, John? To Die For?
To Die For, yeah. To Die For, you can go to todieformovie.com. And that'll take you to Cineflix. You'll see the other movies there as well, but that'll take you directly to Cineflix. You can stream it right now, or you can order the DVD. The folks that are familiar with me still like to have a tangible item, so you can order the DVD by itself. I don't have one sitting here. DVD by itself, DVD autographed, or the DVD autographed and personalized. 3 different prices, okay?
Sure.
Okay. It is an independent film, but I guarantee you the money that we make off of that movie, which we've done really, really well with that one, goes to make the next one. Because I don't want to stick my hand back in the machine. I know what will happen.
And that movie is about you playing a reclusive veteran who gets arrested because he refuses to take the American flag off the back of his El Camino.
Correct.
That machine that you talk about, the Warner Brothers turned into the CW's Smallville during those 10 years. 10 years, wow.
Right.
You were Superman's dad. Ever since that year-long process to merge Discovery Inc. with Warner Media, which was spun off from AT&T, and frankly, their awful DC Comics movies compared to Disney and Marvel. What do you make of studios in general as they get more and more corporate?
Well, it's never a good idea. I call them non-creatives. It's never a good idea to put non-creatives in a creative or give them creative power or creative control, because screenplays come from some guy, some girl, some team who they've been inspired by some wonderful or tragic thing or scary thing, but suffice it to say, they've been inspired by something. And they sit down and they write a screenplay. And then someone who is creative reads it and goes, wow, this is fantastic. I want to develop this a little further. So let's put some money behind it. And then they take it to somebody that has the money and no creative sense whatsoever, but feels like, forgive me for saying this, but every dog needs to pee on the tree. So you've had inspiration that went to someone who's familiar with inspiration to now the first person who is just a nuts and bolts sort of person. And from that point on, it usually only touches non-creative people as it gets developed into something it never was in the first place. It's kind of, what is that game, play around a campfire, telephone. Mm-hmm. So, you say something to the person next to you, and by the time it gets back to you, it doesn't resemble the original thing that you said. That's what happens with a screenplay. And that's why they're so hard to watch, because so many non-creative people have the right to touch them. So to me, it's the enemy of creativity. Independent filmmaking, independent music is where real stories are told. And I think anyone who's watching us right now, anyone who's listening right now, will agree that they're more surprised when a studio film is good, than they are when it's not.
Can I give you a case in point?
That way.
Can I give you a case in point? Can I give you a case in point on that?
Give me a case in point.
So speaking of Warner Brothers, you and Tom Wopat and my first crush, Catherine Bach, maybe tied with Linda Carter. I don't know. Don't tell her. No, Bach was my one. You were all offered roles in the Dukes of Hazzard movie, but all said no. IMDb says because the script was hated by all three of you. Is that true?
That is
Warner
true.
Brothers, Warner Brothers did that one, but Willie Nelson and Burt Reynolds were fun to watch. But this is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm talking about. They destroyed it. They didn't understand the source material. They didn't take the time to. I tell you, the only reason Burt was in that was because he was a big friend of Dukes because of Jimmy Best, and he was a big fan of Dukes. He wanted someone who cared about the source material to be in that movie, because he didn't want. And I'm not saying anything bad about Danny DeVito or John Goodman, but if John Goodman or Danny DeVito had played Boss Hogg, they would have been as bad as Costner in the Superman movie.
You should have been that.
I say that out loud. I did. He didn't get it. He did not understand Jonathan Kent.
You should have been Jonathan Kent, which you already were.
I should have been. I truly should have been. But
Jessica Simpson was no Catherine Bach, I'll tell you. And the 01 didn't have a flag on the roof. So fake.
No, I think it did. I think the flag was on the roof. I think the flag was there.
I forget.
I don't think they took that off. I don't know, but I don't think they were that balls, because then no one would have seen it.
Yeah, totally forgettable.
Would have seen an ad for it, and not a single Dukes of Hazzard fan would have gone to see it. But yeah, so that went through the non-creative machine, and what came out was just offensive. Dukes was not an offensive show. Dukes was a moral show with horsepower and a pretty girl who didn't know she was. The reason why you're such a fan of Catherine Bach's Daisy Duke is because Daisy Duke never had any notion that she was sexy or beautiful or anything but a tomboy who could outshoot us with a bow and arrow. She couldn't outdrive us. You know, she might have believed that she could, but she couldn't.
The wardrobe person might have had a thing or two to do with that too, but that's a
yeah. So
And
why in the
speaking
world
of
they cast
folks-
Jessica? You know, Daisy
Oh,
was
yeah.
the brunette. Why would you cast a blonde to play a brunette's role? I
Like you said, the
wouldn't cast a
creatives.
blonde to play Raquel in the life story of Raquel Welch. You just wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So anyhow, yeah,
The
to
creatives,
prove my point.
were not there. But the good news is Dukes of Hazzard stars to reunite at Gallatin Comic Con. Dukes of Hazzard star Tom Wopat, Luke Duke, will reunite with his former hit TV series co-stars John Schneider, that's you, and
That's
Catherine
me.
Bach, Daisy Duke, that's her, at the 2023 Gallatin Comic Con on November 11th through 12th, beginning at 10 a.m. at the Gallatin Civic Center. Are you going to be there? Is that all true?
I'm
or
going
is
to be
that-
there. I'm going to be there. Yes, you betcha. I'm going to be there. And by the way, I have to throw this out. It's another thing. Saturday night, the 11th, there's an organization called Celebrity Meet and Eat.com. Celebrity Meet and Eat. And I'm going to have 20 of my closest new friends will be part of that. So check that out, celebritymeetandeat.com. It's just me. It's not Tom and Catherine. It's just me. Tom and Kathy and I will be at the Gallatin Comic Con Saturday and Sunday, but the meet and eat is just me.
Just Bo. All right. Well,
Just
Mr.
Bo.
Schneider, thank you for your time. We love you. We are at the end here. So please tell our listeners where they can go to find out more about you, your social media, if you do that. You told us about your site, but tell us again.
The easiest thing to do is get my app because it'll take you to Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. Go to the App Store, John Schneider. That's it. It's free. It'll work on your laptop or on your iPhone or on your Android, and it'll tell you everything I'm up to. So I would greatly appreciate that.
Well, thanks again for coming on with us. I hope to meet you and shake the hands of you and all your cast, and maybe even have you sign my copy of My Life, My Way. And can you send us off with a yeehaw?
I don't have anybody to scare in here, right? Okay, it's loud. Yeah. And by the way, it's yee-haw, not yee-haw. No, that's spelled wrong. Yee-haw.
I wrote it down HAA, so I appreciate that.
You got it right, and you said it right. It's great. It's great. I thank you, my friend. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, everybody.
I don't understand how you ever did without me. I don't understand how I bring you down to your knees.
Welcome to the Stephen C segment of our show where we cover what we just heard. Producer Steve, I am just on heaven's door, whatever you want to say, on cloud nine. What did you think of our guest, Jonathan Kent, Bo Duke?
He's wonderful. I was the one who said you ought to get him on here, and I'll tell you why. So I used to produce a show called Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust, and it was all about cars. Did that for 3 years, a podcast. And I heard that John was going to do Stand on It, which was his movie, his send up to Smokey and the Bandit. So I contacted him. And it took me a couple, 2 or 3 months, and I think I worked through his wife, to be honest. And he agreed, and we had him on for about 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and we had a wonderful time. He was interviewing in a Corvette. He had just bought it for his wife, Alicia, and he was outside the restaurant where the rest of his friends and they were eating. And so I knew that you would have a wonderful time with John because he's had a storied life, and he keeps coming back out. And yeah, I think Alicia and him were the bonding that needed to be there for his life, and directed his energies with a dual purpose, and to give glory to God and to enjoy a wife who had the same vision. So
yeah, there's a famous line in Hollywood lore that says there are no second acts in Hollywood, and I think John is on his 6th or 7th. So yeah, he is the exception to the rule. All right, that was great. Deep breath, switching gears. Okay, we have a new Speaker of the House. He's been there a week and voted no twice on more money for Ukraine, so I like him already. Let's hear how the ginger from the Kremlin, Jen Psaki, introduced him to her audience.
Loading.
This trick will save you thousands of dollars on high energy bills.
Get a
Hold on.
Alarmed by
commercial
gas
ad there for
shortages and
somebody.
high energy costs?
Minutes to talk about this new speaker. First glance, Mike Johnson does seem fine-ish. Conservative, yes, but he once started a civility caucus with a Democrat. And I mean, if nothing else, he wears a suit and has glasses. How threatening can this guy actually be? Well, he gave us all a little clue as to how he would govern in an interview this week.
I am a Bible-believing Christian. Someone asked me today in the media, they said, it's curious, people are curious, what does Mike Johnson think about any issue under the sun? I said, well, go pick up a Bible off your shelf and read it. That's my worldview.
You heard that right. The Bible doesn't just inform his worldview, it is his worldview. In fact, during his first speech in his new job, Johnson suggested that his election as speaker was an act of God. Talk about a bit of a humble brag there. So what exactly has God apparently called on Mike Johnson to do? Well, his views on policy are essentially what you'd expect from a religious fundamentalist. They're more divisive than they are divine.
Oh, I guess she wouldn't get along with the founding fathers of our country, would she, Steve?
Yeah, the Bible is his worldview. Is that funny?
Gosh.
Is Jen Psaki the communist funny? I think a biblical worldview is fantastic. We need more of that in this world.
Yes, we do.
Now this is funny. Clip number 2, just 12 seconds.
Tavern where the elite meet to drink.
Yeah, hello, is Mike there? Last name, Roch.
Hold on, I'll check. My crotch! My crotch! Hey, has anybody seen my crotch lately?
Okay, different last name, but I thought that was funny. Check this out. The day the delusions died, a lot of people woke up on October 7th, 3 weeks ago, as progressives and went to bed that night feeling like conservatives. What changed? By Konstantin Kisin, October 22nd, 2023. I don't know this guy's work, but I'm going to find out a lot more. He wrote this: when Hamas terrorists crossed over the border with Israel and murdered 1,400 innocent people, they destroyed families and entire communities. They also shattered long-held delusions in the West. A friend of mine joked that she woke up on October 7th as a liberal and went to bed that evening as a 65-year-old conservative, but it wasn't really a joke, and she wasn't the only one. What changed? The best way to answer that question is with the help of Thomas Sowell, one of the most brilliant public intellectuals alive today. I agree. In 1987, Sowell published A Conflict of Visions. In this now classic, he offered a simple and powerful explanation of why people disagree about politics. We disagree about politics, Sowell argues, because we disagree about human nature. We see the world through one of two competing visions, each of which tells a radically different story about human nature. Will this wake-up moment persist? It depends, in large part, on our courage to look reality in the face. As Sowell explained, when you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. And the truth is that we have indulged in magical thinking for too long, choosing comforting myths over harsh realities about terrorism, about immigration, and about a host of other issues. In our hunger for progress, we have forgotten that not all change is for the better. Now the world is paying the price for that self-indulgence. Let's hope recent events are the wake-up call we so desperately need. Konstantin Kisin is the co-host of the podcast Trigonometry. My wife listens to that. I think I will start to. Has a Substack also. The economy. Treasury to borrow $776 billion in the final 3 months of the year from our great grandkids if we survive. That part's from me. In a closely watched announcement Monday afternoon, the Treasury Department said it will be looking to borrow $776 billion. The Treasury said it expects to borrow $816 billion between January and March. That's like $1 trillion right there in 3 months. The announcement comes 10 days after the government said the fiscal 2023 budget deficit would be about $1.7 trillion. Love inflation? Like not being able to fight wars in the Middle East, Ukraine, and maybe Taiwan at the same time? Well, thank a politician in DC for that, and a college. With a $2 trillion deficit this year, Washington's fiscal failure is worse than you think, by Christopher Jacobs in The Federalist. The federal government ran a deficit of $1 trillion in 2022, which jumped to $2 trillion in 2023. Why did I say college? After Supreme Court struck down loan forgiveness. In the 12 fiscal months that ended on September 30th, the federal deficit effectively doubled compared to 2022, and the fact that Washington would run such high deficits in comparatively good economic times speaks to both the structural problems driving those deficits and the dangers those structural flaws pose to our nation's fiscal future. If you thought Washington had any sense of fiscal discipline, and really, who would ever put the words Washington and sense in the same sentence, the facts on the recently concluded fiscal year should put that notion to rest. Many headlines reported that the federal government ran only a $1.7 trillion deficit last fiscal year, but the effective deficit was higher, and using a small number in headlines obscures the reality of our deficit problem. The accounting issue behind the discrepancy involves the government's giveaway in the form of student loan forgiveness, which President Biden proposed last year. In June, the Supreme Court struck down this program, which is a problem, as unconstitutional. However, the federal government recorded savings on its books of $321 billion because the Biden administration could not spend this money on their giveaway. From the accounting standpoint, Washington ran a roughly $1.4 trillion deficit in 2022 and a $1.7 trillion deficit this year. But if you consider the $321 billion it spent when the Biden administration first announced its forgiveness plan in 2022, and the $320 billion it saved when the Supreme Court struck that plan down, the federal government actually ran a deficit of $1 trillion in 2022, which jumped to $2 trillion in fiscal 2023. Mr. Jacobs concludes, frittering away the nation's future is the worst kind of gift Americans can give their descendants, yet without significant reform, and soon the next generation will almost certainly face a financial future bleaker than that of their parents. Chris Jacobs is founder and CEO of Juniper Research Group and author of the book, The Case Against Single Payer. So obviously he's biased. Trick or treat. And here's my thoughts for the day. Uncle Jesse. Guy came out of an antique shop carrying a big grandfather's clock. Bumped into this drunk, broke the clock. Guy said, "Why don't you watch where you're going?" The drunk says, "Why don't you carry a wristwatch like everybody else?" Uncle Jesse, you know what happens when a politician takes Viagra? He gets taller. Those are from Dukes of Hazzard. Each show had a narrator. They called him the balladeer. Just so happens to have been Waylon Jennings, 16 #1 albums and Country Music Hall of Fame. So the balladeer said, Jesse Duke has been to 2 places in his life, Hazard County and Korea. As far as he's concerned, that's 1 place too many. You know, that's a certain creek that people sometimes canoe up without a paddle. You could say the Duke boys were on that particular creek right now. There's trouble, and then there's trouble. And the trouble with some trouble is at first, it don't look like trouble. Man, I'll tell you, the day they passed out good luck, old Bo and Luke must have been fishing. If it wasn't for bad luck, the Dukes wouldn't have any luck at all. And Waylon Jennings' line about Boss Hogg, he was as happy as a rat trapped in a corn crib because he would have to eat his way out. It's Halloween night. There are tons of things written about All Hallows Eve. Here are just a few quick notes to broaden your wisdom. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as a time to honor saints. Soon after, All Saints' Day came to incorporate some of the traditions of Samhain. Samhain was the Druid god of death. The Druids, ancient Celtic polytheic priest, believed in the supernatural and tried to placate the Lord of Death with offerings. Samhain was first observed by Celtic pagans. Samhain marked the Celtic New Year, the end of summer, and the end of the harvest season. It also signaled the beginning of winter, which they associated with death. On this day, the Celts believed the veil between the living and the dead was especially thin. On Halloween's past, when it was believed that ghosts came back to the earth, worldly people thought that they would encounter them if they left their homes. To avoid being recognized by them, people would wear masks when they left their homes after dark so that the ghost would mistake them for fellow spirits. I've chosen to stick with candy and costumes and a fire pit and choose to celebrate the life and joy of the little ones who dress up like superheroes or ballerinas. Adults spoil everything. Enjoy your family and friends. We're in the holiday season. And that is it for this episode. Thank you, John Schneider, for reminding us Jesus loves us and the South will rise again. Yeehaw! And God bless his wife, Alicia, in heaven. Until next time, this is your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of mcview.us. Peace in our time, and G2G. Let's go out with John Schneider singing that iconic Waylon Jennings song, Good Old Boys.
Listen up, just a good old boy.
That's John.
Ever meaning no harm.
Yep.
Beats all you ever saw. Been in trouble with the law since the day they was born. Straightening the curves, riding the hills. Some days a mountain might